In the heart of Jerusalem, an impossible phenomenon appeared, leaving experts in shock. This is the chilling story of the Eye in the Dome, a perfectly symmetrical, pulsing light anomaly that formed directly over the dome of the rock, accompanied by an eerie, total silence. Witness testimonies and scientific confusion converge as this prophetic sign echoes ancient warnings, begging the question, is humanity running out of time? Prepare for a revelation that screams, humanity must awaken. Jerusalem. A city woven from layers of history, faith, and ceaseless tension. Its very air seems to hum with ancient prayers and modern disputes. For centuries, it has been the epicenter of prophecy, the stage for events that defy mortal comprehension. Yet, for countless residents, it is also a place of routine, of daily life unfolding beneath a sky that has witnessed millennia of miracles and portents. Until one ordinary morning, that routine was shattered by something utterly, impossibly, extraordinary. It was a crisp, clear autumn morning in late October 2024. The sun, still low on the horizon, was just beginning to cast its golden glow over the ancient stone of the old city. The air was cool and dry, carrying the distant scent of spices from the market and the faint murmur of morning prayers. The usual sounds of a city awakening were beginning, the distant call to prayer, the rumble of early traffic, the chatter of vendors setting up their stalls, the excited babble of tourists. Our story begins near the Dome of the Rock, one of the world's most sacred and contested sites. Its iconic golden dome, a beacon of Islamic faith, sits atop the Temple Mount, revered by Jews as the site of ancient temples and by Christians for its biblical significance. It is a place where every stone holds a story, and every moment feels charged with spiritual weight. On this particular morning, a young Israeli historian, Dr. Ari Ben-David, was conducting field research near the Western Wall, just below the Temple Mount. He was meticulously documenting ancient architectural details, his mind focused on the tangible past. Meanwhile, a group of American tourists, led by their guide, stood in the nearby Jewish quarter, admiring the intricate details of the local artistry. And a Palestinian shopkeeper was just opening his small souvenir shop in the bustling old city market. Each person, from different walks of life, was engaged in their mundane morning, utterly unaware that the sky above them was about to become a canvas for the impossible. The minute hand crept towards 8:15 a.m. The city was alive, vibrant with its daily pulse. No clouds marred the azure sky. No unusual atmospheric conditions had been reported. It was a perfect, ordinary morning in Jerusalem, setting the stage for an event that would defy every scientific explanation, every theological expectation. A moment so profound, so terrifyingly unexplainable, that it would force humanity to confront questions it had long chosen to ignore. The air, once filled with the mundane hum of life, was about to hold its breath. The clock struck 8:15 a.m. The first anomaly was not visual, but auditory. A chilling, pervasive silence. It wasn't just the absence of sound, it was an active vacuum, sucking every audible frequency from the air. The bustling market fell silent. The distant traffic vanished. The chirping birds, the murmur of prayers, the chatter of tourists, all ceased abruptly, as if a cosmic mute button had been pressed. It was an unnatural quiet, heavy with an inexplicable pressure that caused a sharp ringing in the ears of all who witnessed it. Dr. Ari Ben-David, holding his measuring tape, froze. The Palestinian shopkeeper, mid-sentence with a customer, stopped, his eyes wide. The American tourists, laughing moments before, exchanged bewildered glances. All eyes, instinctively, turned upward. And there, directly above the golden dome of the rock, the impossible began to materialize. From what seemed like thin air, a perfectly symmetrical, circular anomaly began to form. It wasn't a cloud, it had none of the wispy, nebulous qualities of vapor. Nor was it a reflection, for the light it emitted was its own. It was a kind of giant eye, woven from energy and light. Its center was a void, a deep, unsettling darkness, like a pupil, rimmed by concentric rings of vibrant, pulsating light that shimmered with colors never before seen in nature, ethereal blues, glowing violets, and a profound, luminous gold that mirrored the dome below. The pupil of this celestial eye seemed to move, slowly, deliberately, as if observing the city below. Its gaze swept over the ancient stones, the holy sites, the throngs of bewildered people. A profound sense of being watched, of being judged by an unseen entity, washed over the entire city. It was an overwhelming presence, neither benevolent nor malevolent, but simply ancient and utterly powerful. Panic had not yet set in, rather, a collective, profound awe, tinged with a deep, primal fear, gripped every soul. Phones were raised, cameras clicked, but the devices remained stubbornly inert. The electromagnetic silence was absolute. No recordings, no photos were possible in those initial, terrifying minutes. The eye defied technology, forcing witnesses to rely solely on their own senses, etching the vision into their minds with an undeniable clarity. The air grew heavier, thick with an unseen pressure, and the chilling silence amplified the beating of thousands of hearts. Everyone knew, instinctively, that this was a sign. A sign meant for Jerusalem, but bearing a message for all of humanity. The global community erupted. As abruptly as it appeared, the eye in the dome vanished, taking with it the inexplicable silence, but leaving behind an indelible mark on the consciousness of all who witnessed it. Phone lines immediately jammed. Social media exploded with frantic eyewitness accounts. But without initial recordings, the world was left to grapple with a phenomenon that defied explanation, deepening the mystery. Within hours, Jerusalem became a focal point of international scrutiny. Scientists, theologians, and government officials descended upon the city. Meteorologists were baffled. No known atmospheric conditions could explain a perfectly symmetrical, pulsating light formation. Physicists presented data confirming a localized, complete electromagnetic interference during the event, a phenomenon deemed impossible without a massive, detectable energy source. Astronomers ruled out any known celestial body or atmospheric refraction. The consensus among the scientific community was a mix of bewilderment and frustration. This event was unexplainable by current scientific understanding. Dr. Ari Ben-David, the historian, found himself thrust into the global spotlight. His meticulous records of the exact time and location, combined with his own eyewitness account, made him a central figure. He recounted the eerie silence, the impossible eye, and the profound sense of being watched. His calm, academic demeanor lent credibility to a story that otherwise bordered on the fantastic. Yet, even he, a man of facts, struggled to categorize what he had seen. Meanwhile, a torrent of theories emerged. Online forums buzzed with discussions ranging from natural but rare atmospheric phenomena to advanced extraterrestrial technology. But for many, especially in Jerusalem, the explanation lay in the ancient texts. Religious scholars, initially cautious, began to connect the event to long-dormant prophecies. The appearance of a sign in the heavens above Jerusalem, a symbol resembling an eye or a watcher, resonated deeply with passages from biblical texts, particularly those in the Old Testament. The shock among specialists was palpable. Scientists felt their paradigms challenged, their instruments failing to explain the event. Theologians grappled with the implications of a physical manifestation so clearly echoing spiritual prophecy. Governments worried about social unrest and geopolitical instability in an already volatile region. The eye in the dome wasn't just a bizarre occurrence, it was a cosmic anomaly, a direct challenge to humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. The lingering question, whispered in hushed tones across the globe, was clear: what did this impossible sign truly mean, and why did it appear now, above Jerusalem? As the world grappled with the inexplicable phenomenon above Jerusalem, a collective turning to ancient wisdom began. The sudden, unexplainable appearance of the eye in the dome and its chilling silence forced theologians and scholars into a frantic search through millennia-old texts. Dr. Ari Ben-David, initially a historian of architecture, found himself drawn into this spiritual inquest, his scholarly rigor now applied to the realms of prophecy. Religious experts, particularly those with deep knowledge of biblical eschatology, quickly found disturbing parallels. While no single verse directly predicted an eye in the dome, the symbolism and location resonated powerfully with several key prophetic themes. Passages in the Old Testament, such as Zechariah 12 verse 4, which speaks of making Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all peoples, or Isaiah 60 verses 1-3, referring to a coming glory of the Lord, that rises upon you, took on a new, ominous meaning. The eye seemed to be the ultimate celestial confirmation that Jerusalem remained the focal point of divine attention and, perhaps, of an impending reckoning. More specifically, the concept of a vigilant, all-seeing divine presence was repeatedly emphasized. References to the eyes of the Lord roving throughout the earth, 2 Chronicles 16 verse 9, and prophetic visions detailing celestial phenomena preceding great changes became central to discussions. Some scholars pointed to Ezekiel's complex visions of cherubim full of eyes, Ezekiel 10 verse 12, interpreting the eye in the dome as a modern manifestation of a biblical divine manifestation, an overt sign from the spiritual realm. The profound silence that accompanied the apparition was seen as a direct echo of passages like Habakkuk 2 verse 20, "The Lord is in his holy temple, let all the earth be silent before him." The shock deepened as discussions moved beyond mainstream interpretations. Certain esoteric Jewish and Christian texts, often dismissed as apocryphal or too allegorical, suddenly gained chilling relevance. These texts hinted at seals being broken and signs appearing in the heavens above the holy city as precursors to a great awakening or a final judgment. The eye was interpreted by some as a direct, unmistakable signal that a prophetic timeline, long dormant, had just been reactivated. The question became less about what the eye was, and more about why now. Was it a benevolent warning, a celestial call to repentance? Or was it a stern, cosmic judgment beginning to unfold? The experts, previously locked in academic debates, now grappled with a tangible, unexplainable event that pointed directly to the fulfillment of prophecies stretching back thousands of years. The world's eyes, suddenly, were not just on Jerusalem, but on the very concept of divine intervention, forced to confront the chilling possibility that their sacred texts were not just history, but a terrifying blueprint for the future. The initial shockwaves from Jerusalem quickly morphed into a global tsunami of fear, faith, and frenzied speculation. The lack of scientific explanation for the eye in the dome amplified its impact, creating a vacuum that was swiftly filled by spiritual interpretations. Social media became a chaotic battleground of believers proclaiming divine intervention and skeptics demanding empirical proof. The image of the golden dome beneath the ethereal eye became iconic, plastered across every news outlet, burned into the collective consciousness. In the United States, the reaction was particularly fervent. Televangelists dedicated entire sermons to the Jerusalem sign, interpreting it as a direct fulfillment of end-times prophecies. Fear-mongering reached new heights, with some proclaiming a literal rapture was imminent, leading to spikes in church attendance and calls for repentance. But skepticism remained fierce, particularly in secular circles, where scientists continued to search for mundane explanations, often clashing publicly with religious leaders. The eye became a litmus test for belief, dividing families, communities, and nations. Around the world, the phenomenon had diverse, yet equally profound, effects. In Europe, the debate was more philosophical, grappling with the erosion of rationalism. In parts of Asia, mystical traditions saw the eye as a cosmic alignment, a shift in spiritual energy. In the Middle East, already a powder keg of religious tension, the sign in Jerusalem ignited both fear and fervent hope, depending on one's faith and perspective. The world was forced to look at the holy city not just as a geopolitical hotspot, but as the potential epicenter of a divine drama. The pervasive sense of unease, the feeling that humanity must awaken, permeated daily life. People felt a shift, an intangible weight in the air. Conspiracy theories flourished, linking the eye to everything from ancient alien visitations to secret government mind control experiments. Stock markets saw fluctuations driven by public anxiety. Governments discreetly convened special committees, behind closed doors, desperate to understand and control the narrative, fearing widespread panic. The silence of the first minutes of the event now seemed to echo globally, a constant, low-frequency hum of existential dread. The eye in the dome wasn't just a fleeting moment, it was a persistent, unsettling question mark hanging over humanity. It challenged the very foundations of science, religion, and human perception. It forced billions to confront the terrifying possibility that the world they thought they knew was merely a thin veil over a much grander, and far more ominous, reality. The question was no longer if it was real, but what it truly meant for the immediate future, and what drastic steps humanity needed to take to prepare for what was coming. The global uproar surrounding the eye in the dome intensified the already volatile battle between scientific dogma and religious revelation. For the scientific community, the phenomenon was an affront to established physics, meteorology, and optics. Teams from NASA, major universities, and international research institutes pored over every available pixel of grainy phone footage, as initial recordings were impossible. Only later, distant videos emerged, and every eyewitness account. Their conclusion remained frustratingly consistent: it should not have happened. Meteorologists could not explain a perfectly symmetrical, pulsating, self-contained atmospheric anomaly that appeared without any corresponding weather patterns. Physicists wrestled with the localized electromagnetic silence, an energy disruption so precise it defied known forces. Astronomers found no celestial bodies, no comet, no unusual solar flare activity that could account for such a distinct visual in broad daylight. The most honest scientific assessment was a stark admission of ignorance: we have no current scientific model to explain this event. This admission of scientific impotence, however, only fueled the religious fervor. For millions, particularly in the United States, where faith often intertwines with public discourse, the eye was proof of divine intervention, a direct sign from God. Televangelists amplified the message, using the event to call for repentance and warn of impending judgment. Books analyzing biblical prophecy with new urgency soared on bestseller lists. Churches saw unprecedented attendance. The eye became a central piece of evidence in the ongoing debate about the literal interpretation of biblical end times. Yet, counter-arguments were fierce. Skeptics, particularly those in secular academia and online communities, posited theories of mass hallucination, elaborate hoaxes, or covert military experiments. They meticulously dissected blurry videos, pointing out inconsistencies, even as they struggled to explain the collective silence. Some even suggested a sophisticated psychological operation designed to destabilize the region or manipulate global beliefs. The fight for the truth behind the eye became a proxy war for the very soul of humanity, a clash between faith and reason playing out on the global stage. Dr. Ari Ben-David found himself caught in the crossfire. His meticulous historical analysis of Jerusalem's prophetic significance now placed him at the heart of the theological debate. He became a reluctant bridge between science and spirituality, struggling to reconcile his rational mind with the undeniable, unexplainable event he witnessed. The eye was forcing humanity to confront its limitations, to acknowledge that some phenomena simply transcend current understanding. And in that humbling realization lay the core of its urgent message: humanity must awaken. Not just spiritually, but to the vastness of what it still doesn't comprehend. Beyond the scientific confusion and the theological debates, the true power of the eye in the dome lay in the message it conveyed, a chilling, yet undeniable, call to action that resonated deep within the collective human consciousness. This wasn't a warning delivered through words, but through a profound, shared feeling of urgency that impacted all who witnessed it, a silent scream across the spiritual divide. Eyewitnesses, from every background and belief system, reported a similar, unsettling sensation during the apparition. A pervasive feeling that time was running out, that humanity was at a critical juncture, on the precipice of a profound transformation or a devastating fall. This wasn't fear of immediate death, but a deep-seated anxiety about the very trajectory of human civilization. It was a sense that complacency was a luxury humanity could no longer afford, that fundamental changes were required. This silent message, emanating from the eye, connected directly to the biblical prophecies that scholars now desperately revisited. The eye was interpreted by many as a divine gaze, a watchful presence before a great transition. It echoed passages speaking of a time when people would be lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, 2 Timothy 3 verse 4, or where knowledge will increase, but many will run to and fro, Daniel 12 verse 4, signaling a period of great distraction and spiritual emptiness. The eye was the ultimate cosmic alarm clock, urging humanity to look beyond the material, beyond the superficial. The message was clear: humanity must awaken. But awaken to what? The interpretations varied widely, yet the core sentiment remained consistent: awaken to a deeper spiritual truth, to the interconnectedness of all life, to the urgency of environmental stewardship, to the need for genuine compassion and unity in a world tearing itself apart. The eye challenged humanity's self-imposed blindness, its addiction to distraction, its dismissal of ancient wisdom. It was a direct indictment of a world sleepwalking into a future of its own making, oblivious to the profound spiritual void growing within. Dr. Ari Ben-David, in his interviews, spoke of this unique feeling. It wasn't propaganda or fear-mongering. It was an undeniable, internal resonance, a profound shift in perception. The I didn't just appear, it spoke to the soul, bypassing the intellect, leaving an indelible imprint of cosmic urgency. This was its true terror and its true grace, the undeniable, unexplainable call to awaken before the final consequences of humanity's spiritual slumber became irreversible. As the initial shock of the eye in the dome subsided, the world found itself more divided than ever. The phenomenon became a global Rorschach test, reflecting humanity's deepest fears and most fervent beliefs. The urgency of humanity must awaken was understood differently by each faction, leading to more fragmentation rather than unity. In the United States, the cultural fault lines deepened. For religious communities, they solidified their conviction that end-times prophecies were unfolding, leading to increased evangelism, but also to a more insular focus on spiritual preparation, sometimes at the expense of global issues. For the secular population, the continued lack of scientific explanation only fueled skepticism, leading to a deeper distrust of anything beyond empirical proof. The divide grew wider, the conversations more heated, and the ability to find common ground more elusive. Governments, acutely aware of the potential for mass hysteria, worked overtime to control the narrative. Official statements focused on the unexplained atmospheric phenomenon, downplaying any prophetic implications. Behind closed doors, intelligence agencies undoubtedly analyzed every piece of data, desperate to understand if that was a natural event, a deliberate hoax, or something far more alien and powerful. The geopolitical implications of such a sign appearing over Jerusalem were too vast, too volatile, to be ignored. Meanwhile, a quieter, more insidious change began to occur. The underlying feeling of urgency, of a ticking clock, permeated subconscious levels. Even those who dismissed that as a hoax found themselves questioning, feeling a subtle shift in the global atmosphere. Anxiety levels rose, not just from news cycles, but from an almost primal sense that something fundamental had changed. People became more aware of environmental crises, of social injustices, of political polarization, seeing these issues with a new, unsettling clarity, as if they had lifted a veil. The debate about the eye in the dome moved from being a sensational news item to a constant, unresolved background hum in collective consciousness. It became a symbol. For some, it was a beacon of hope, a sign of divine intervention for positive change. For others, it was an ominous warning, a herald of impending judgment. But for all, it was a profound, undeniable challenge to their worldview. The world continued its daily routines, yet beneath the surface, a tremor of uncertainty persisted, a constant reminder that something extraordinary had happened, and that its full meaning was yet to be revealed. The question of what's next hung heavy in the air. As time marched on, the lingering impact of the eye in the dome only intensified. Its appearance, initially a singular shock, began to serve as a chilling lens through which global events were now viewed. What was once dismissed as coincidence, now, for many, felt like confirmation. The world's mounting crises seemed to align with the prophecies that was believed to echo, creating a pervasive sense that humanity was indeed facing an unprecedented reckoning. The political landscape, already fractured, became even more volatile. Nations turned inward, nationalistic sentiments surged, and international cooperation faltered. The eye became a divisive symbol. Some leaders invoked it as a call for spiritual unity, others dismissed it as superstition, using the division to consolidate power. The global order, already stressed, showed deeper cracks, with alliances shifting and conflicts simmering beneath a thin veneer of diplomacy. The air was thick with mistrust and the bitter taste of ideological warfare. Simultaneously, the environmental crises worsened with alarming speed. Record-breaking heatwaves became the norm, turning vast regions into dust bowls and fueling unprecedented wildfires. Unseasonal superstorms ravaged coastlines, causing mass displacement and irreparable damage. The scientific community scrambled for solutions, but the sheer scale and frequency of the disasters felt overwhelming, almost preordained. For many, this was not just climate change, it was the earth crying out, its fury unleashed as part of a larger, prophetic design. The warnings of a planet in distress, once theoretical, became devastatingly real. The rapid advancements in technology, particularly in AI and virtual realities, also took on a darker connotation. The seamless integration of digital systems into daily life, while promising convenience, also facilitated a new level of surveillance and control. The line between authentic human experience and manufactured reality blurred, leading to a pervasive sense of disconnection and apathy. For those who believed in the eye's warning, this was the great illusion, subtly trapping humanity in a gilded cage of its own making, distracting it from the deeper truths. And perhaps most profoundly, a sense of spiritual fragmentation deepened. Traditional faith institutions grappled with dwindling congregations and internal schisms, while new, often radical, spiritual movements surged, promising salvation or enlightenment. The search for meaning became more desperate, but also more polarized. The eye seemed to point to a collective spiritual test, a moment of profound choice for humanity, awaken to a deeper truth, or risk falling into an abyss of disillusionment. The pressure was immense, a silent, pervasive hum of existential dread as 2026 loomed closer. As the world hurtled towards the climax of 2026, the legacy of the eye in the dome became undeniable. It was no longer a mere memory, it was a constant, terrifying question mark hanging over humanity's head, amplified by the escalating global crises that mirrored ancient prophecies. The original silence of its appearance now felt like a final, desperate breath before a scream. The geopolitical tensions around Jerusalem intensified. The eye had solidified the city's role as the literal and metaphorical center of a global spiritual awakening, or a final confrontation. Pilgrimages surged, but so did protests and military buildups, reflecting the world's desperate scramble for meaning and control. The air in the holy city felt perpetually charged, a palpable tension between divine promise and human conflict. Experts, now beyond shock, were desperately trying to find answers, publicly clashing over interpretations. Scientists presented increasingly complex models attempting to retroactively explain the impossible phenomenon, their theories becoming more convoluted and less convincing. Theologians, conversely, found chilling corroboration in every new disaster, every societal shift, deepening their conviction that a prophetic timeline was indeed unfolding, and that 2026 was its pivotal moment. The question of what will happen in 2026 haunted every conversation, every news cycle. Was it a literal event, a sudden catastrophe? Or was it a metaphorical culmination, a point of no return for humanity's spiritual descent? The consensus among those who truly felt the weight of the eye's message was clear. It wasn't about an external judgment as much as it was about an internal one, a consequence of humanity's choices to remain asleep. The very essence of the sign, its universal language of light and silence, transcended religious and cultural divides, even if its interpretations created new ones. It was a cosmic mirror, reflecting humanity's fragmented state. It revealed a world consumed by distraction, by materialism, by an inability to discern real danger from manufactured noise. The eye had called, but had humanity truly listened? The answer, as 2026 dawned, was still agonizingly uncertain. The prophecy wasn't just about humanity, it was for humanity. And its final message hung heavy in the air. The chilling reality of the prophetic sign that appeared in Jerusalem is no longer a distant memory. It is the very fabric of our present, intensifying with each passing moment as 2026 unfolds. Is it a mere coincidence that an unexplainable celestial event above one of the world's holiest sites coincided with an unprecedented surge in global crises, mirroring ancient prophecies? Or is it a direct, undeniable call from something far greater than ourselves? The question no longer is if these forces are at play, but what we are willing to do with this profound knowledge. The signs are undeniable. Look around you. Political chaos, raging environmental disasters, the subtle but insidious grip of technological control, and a deepening spiritual void. They are not isolated threats, they are the very fabric of our reality, intensifying as we plummet deeper into the abyss that I warned about. The central message, searingly clear, humanity must awaken. But awaken to what? To the truth of our interconnectedness, to the urgency of our planetary crisis, to the profound spiritual emptiness we have collectively embraced. So, what will you do with this monumental revelation? Will you dismiss the eye in the dome as just another atmospheric anomaly, allowing yourself to be lulled further into the great illusion of random events? Or will you bravely question the reality around you, recognizing the alarming truth that a prophetic warning has been given, and its fulfillment is not a distant future, but a chilling present? The time for passive acceptance is over. The silence that accompanied that was a demand for attention, a final call. The echoes of its message are reverberating, and its consequences are becoming undeniable. Leave your deepest thoughts and interpretations in the comments below. Do you honestly believe we are living through the chilling signs of this prophecy? Have you felt the subtle shift, the growing urgency, that thy imprinted on the world? Do you possess the courage, the conviction, to share this vital warning with your friends, your family, your world? Share this video far and wide. Let's collectively unravel the profound mysteries that powers, seen and unseen, tirelessly attempt to hide from us all. The time for blind acceptance is over. The time for questioning and for action has arrived. The eye is watching. What will be your legacy in 2026?